In this video, I wanted to discuss the notion of a disclosure. Accounts know what disclosures are. I'm going to put this in context. So this is a view of an XBRL report. This view, in another video, I mentioned the notion of a fragment. So these are different fragments of the report. Okay, so a network is a type of fragment. It's a technical type. There's no thing called a network in accounting. But in XBRL, there is a notion of a network. And a network, what it does is it separates things. Sometimes it separates things because you want to separate them. Other times you use networks because you have to use them to separate things, to avoid collisions in the logic of the information. So here I have a small report. It looks small, but it is small, but it's a very sophisticated report. It has all the different patterns of information in it in one report. I use this for testing and benchmarking and other such things. So there are 14 networks in this report. And this is the view, the network view. Each of these networks, you can't really look at a network because it won't make sense if you have multiple hypercubes that have different information models. So you don't really view it here. You view it by looking at the hypercubes within a network. But this is a technical view. Another technical view of the report is a component. So a component is a combination of a network and a hypercube. The reason you need the notion of a component is because in the way the US GAAP and IFRS taxonomies work, you can use the same hypercube to represent different things. So, for example, the US GAAP taxonomy has a hypercube named statement table. So Microsoft used that concept 128 times to represent 128 different chunks of information in their report. But this is still a technical artifact. A hypercube, here you see most of the hypercubes have different names. I intentionally gave these three hypercubes the same name in order to make a point, but they're different sets of information. So here you have something that looks like an income statement. Here you have something that looks like a different type of an income statement. And this is a statement of comprehensive income where you reconcile net income to comprehensive income. Okay, so the point here is that if you give these more precise names, they'll look different, and each one of these hypercubes can be unique, and that makes the notion of a network and a component somewhat irrelevant. So, but hypercube is still a technical artifact. That's the way that I see it. Others might see this differently. It's technical in that it allows you to do things, but it's also kind of logical because a hypercube is used to string together basically pivot tables, and it lets you work with sets of information. A block is a purely logical artifact. There's nothing technical about a block. So, in fact, there's no notion of a block in XBRL. It's a high-level unit of information. It's smaller than a network, but it's bigger than a fact. It's basically sets of facts that go together that have specific patterns of information. So here see roll-ups, but a block could also be a roll forward. It could be a text block. It could just be a set of information. A fragment is simply, it's another smaller piece of a block. I'm not even sure if we're going to keep this in. It's useful, but it's not really that useful. The one that I want to cover the most, though, is the notion of a disclosure. So a disclosure is a logical artifact, but it's even higher level than logic. It's financial reporting specific logic. So the way that I use the term disclosure here is that everything, including the primary financial statements, are disclosures. So a disclosure is basically something that is disclosed. Here I have 20 different disclosures, and you click on one of the disclosures and you can see that bit of information. So notice that every one of these has a unique name. So you can uniquely know what something is and refer to that. You can search on the name. But basically, these are informational artifacts that represent the financial disclosures. And these disclosures, they're all represented in the form of rules. So here we have an assets roll-up. The disclosure assets roll-up, it has a name. Wait, yes, it's in the balance sheet hypercube. It is a roll-up, and the roll-up has to have the total concept of assets. This block, liabilities and equity roll-up, it also is part of the balance sheet hypercube. It's also a roll-up, and that has the concept liabilities and equity as the total of that roll-up. So these disclosures are informational artifacts that are specific to financial reporting, and this is what accountants work with, disclosures in a report. So the network component and hypercube and block are really not even necessary in a financial report, but these are all included because people are still obsessed by the XBRL syntax, and they're used to things like the notion of a network, or some people call it a group, but the official term is network. And people are representing information inconsistently and not following best practices. That's why you need this component. This hypercube, it's kind of useful, but people are not building financial reporting taxonomies leveraging hypercubes correctly at this point. So what the disclosure does, or what these intermediate components do, is helps you logically work toward this thing that you actually want to work with, the disclosure. And I'm going to leave that as the explanation right now. So I'm going to improve these a little later, but that's where I'll stop right now.